Hello and welcome to The Mohit Show. In this video, I will be covering posts from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. On to our first post, titled, "It Wasn't Safe to Be a Girl." This is by a detransitioned female. Feeling deeply sad right now thinking about all the things I missed out on, and how shitty my teenage years were, spent anxious and alone. I didn't even get to explore feminine interests as a child like makeup/dolls, etc. I felt like I had to be a tomboy, was made fun of and made to feel inferior for being a girl. And women I grew up with always warned me about how terrible being a woman is. Periods, childbirth, sexual assault, not to mention my own childhood littered with sexual assault. Never told me about the good parts or helped me feel okay in my own body. Never got to experience girls' days with my mom or anything, and probably never will. Only 18 and probably won't ever experience motherhood because of irreversible damage I did as a scared kid trying to escape being a woman. I'm fucked. Next post, titled, "I hate my body and what I've done to it." This is also by a detrans female. This is just a vent, and I'm sorry if it doesn't belong here, but I need to let it out. I hate my body so intensely that it eats me alive all day, every day. I can't stop thinking about it. I literally can't stop. Why did I remove my breasts? Why? Why did I go on testosterone for 5 years? I've gained so much weight ever since stopping testosterone 3 years ago. I look deformed. I don't see anything that resembles a woman when I look in the mirror. I miss the feeling of my chest. Everything is numb, and sometimes it hurts randomly. I miss my old voice. I miss my old shape. I miss not being covered in body hair and having to shave my face every single day. I used to have such a nice female body, and I completely fucked it. My face doesn't look male or female. I just look like a complete fucked, deformed person who's in the middle of two genders and I can never go back. I get jealous of every woman I see. I even get jealous of drawings of women. I can't look at any woman who's nude or I'll have a mental breakdown and cry because of how badly I've messed myself up. The jealousy eats me alive. Even ads that are completely innocent, such as swimwear ads, give me a panic attack. Because I can't go back to my normal body. I had that body and it's gone. I honestly don't know how I'm going to live like this. I don't see a future like this. Next post, titled, "I'm Losing It." This is also by a detrans female. I'm permanently fucked up and I can't live like this anymore. My body is irreversibly fucked up and especially my voice. I don't want to look at myself or hear myself talk ever again. I feel poisoned and hideous. This feels like some big joke, honestly. I would do anything to not be in this body. Voice training just doesn't work for me. I'm not going to harm myself, but Jesus fucking Christ, I don't want to be alive right now. This is the only place where anyone can even have a grasp on how torturous this is. I can't talk to any of my friends about it because they're either trans themselves and can't fathom that I'm actually worse mentally than I was before ever starting hormones, or they've never started and aren't trans and just don't get it at all. I can't go out in public without being laughed at or stared at simply because of my voice and face, lack of figure, etc. I don't dress eccentrically or anything. I actually dress very basically not to draw any attention to me. This isn't some mistake, this is living hell. And I can't fucking take it anymore. I know things get better with time, but I'd rather be locked away in a mental institution for months than live a day-to-day regular life like this. I don't want to be seen by anyone. If I could stay in my room under the covers forever, I would. I feel so ugly. I literally feel like a defective human being, and not being alive truly seems like a way better option. Again, I'm not going to hurt myself, I'm just venting. Nothing has ever hurt me ever like this. I'm gaining weight, and it's making me very, very suicidal. I'm nowhere near overweight either, in fact. I'm probably underweight, but I don't know exactly how much I weigh anymore. I don't have the verbiage to express how much pain I'm in. I spend most of my free time crying. I can't talk to my family about it because every time it's been brought up, it's an "I told you so" moment. And they always bring up medication which I never ever want to be on. No sympathy or emotional support. I just want assurance that I'm not some walking grotesque, hideous biological experiment laughingstock. All I've wanted for years is just to look normal. The acne I've gotten from all this fucked up shit is just the icing on the cake. I'm not attractive by any means. Trying to feel attractive or even human for that matter, like this is a joke. I wish I had an adult in my life who cared enough to stop me. I started testosterone at 16. I don't have any support and I just want to die. More than I ever did before starting hormones. I spent high school crying and skipping classes literally just to sob somewhere by myself to give you an idea of how bad my mental state is now. I know I need therapy, but I can't pay for it. I don't want solutions right now, I just want what I've been deficient in for years: emotional support. I don't have anyone to cry to besides myself, and I don't think I should listen to my own head right now. From the comments, this is one of the most honest sounding posts I've actually read on this sub. Thank you for putting genuine, unfiltered words to the pain a lot of us go through without denying or minimizing the experience. It's correct and normal to feel let down by family or whoever let us transition, but moreover as a teenager. Unless you snuck out and got their hormones from some guy in an alleyway, someone had to drive you. A whole bunch of doctors and mental health professionals had to be cool with sending you down this path. Honestly, I don't want to cause despair, but the situation is fucked up. I've got even more trust issues now because of it. But you're young. There's a lot of things you can do yet. For the time being, you need to let yourself feel your feelings because they're real, and the whole reason we have them is to be an alarm about what things we should do and should not do. Your emotional alarm is working really well right now, telling you accurately that some changes need to be made. Many of us understand the pain you're in, and it all makes sense why you feel the way you do. Of course it does. I just hope that in spite of all this, you're finding a place of some stability where you can move forward from. Next post, titled, Shocked looking at my medical records from ages 8 to 16. Detrans female. I've never seen these before until last night. My doctors have had little transparency in my opinion. There's over 1,000 pages. All in all, despite how many appointments over the years I've been to, I've never had a full psychological evaluation. Just diagnosed with gender incongruence and a few anxiety disorders. Also, in some early calls/appointments, my mom thought I was bipolar at 8 years old and was already talking about medication for that? I don't know how to feel about that. I never had a chance, y'all. Also, I had no idea they administered fentanyl and Narcan during my top surgery when I was 13. Is that just normal during intense surgeries? Which it is, but... From the comments, questioning own gender transition. I'm honestly surprised you got top surgery at 13. For something people are claiming only happens in the rarest of circumstances, it happens a lot. And someone who's detrans replies to that. That's an interesting point because I think gender ideology as a whole has so much misinformation that, like, anyone, regardless of belief, should want to research and double check everything. Not the responsibility of a child, of course, but it does raise huge concerns. And the original poster replies to the original post. Another concern that I don't think merits another post. I was clinically obese, very high percentile, and initially was told I'd need to lose 20 pounds before they'd operate on me. I didn't. I gained, if anything. They still operated. Like, no wonder my result is a bit wonky. Also, I could have died? I wonder how they would have handled a dead 13-year-old trans kid and hide that from the media. Now, on to the next post, titled Sharing My Story and Why I'm Where I Am Now. This is by Detrans Male. I ruined my body and life, and I blame my mom 10,000%. I'm almost 20, assigned male at birth. You aren't assigned, you are born male, and started hormone therapy at 14 years old. For the purpose of this post, I will say that I now use he, him pronouns, but will forever be misgendered as she, her, and I hate it. This is long, so if you make it to the end, I truly appreciate you sticking it out. So let's start at the beginning. My mom and dad had me when they were young, my mom being 19 and my dad being 22. Growing up, I was definitely a feminine boy. I hated getting dirty, playing outside sports, and doing most things that were generally considered boy stuff. I remember the first time gender was ever brought up to me was by my mother, and I had to be around 7 or 8 years old. My mom and dad split when I was around that age, and I remember seeing less and less of my dad only because my mom would purposely alienate him from me, which she has admitted to doing. Pretty quickly after that, my mom started introducing girly things. She started buying me dresses and dolls and would tell me to try them out and see if I liked them. Oh, of course, I, like many kids my age, loved playing dress up and playing with toys of any kind. A very it's probably I, not A. I very vividly remember my mom telling me, you can be a girl if you want to be, starting around age 10. This was when the seed was planted. My hair was getting long and my mom encouraged me to grow it out. I would get my nails done with her every few weeks, and I started asking for makeup because I didn't feel girly enough by 12. I'll admit it didn't feel quite right, but it felt better than being a boy that sat on the sidelines while other boys played soccer and football and wrestled with each other in the mud. Looking back now, I just don't understand why my mom never told me it was okay to be a boy that didn't like those kinds of things. Instead, she pushed me to explore the idea that I was better off being a girl. I remember around 12 years old, I felt more comfortable on the outside, looking like a girl because the boys around me were all growing tall and starting puberty while I was left in the dust with my scrawny, childlike figure. By the time I was 14, things haven't changed much for me. I was still scrawny and childlike, while other 14-year-old boys around me were clearly growing into young men. At this point, I believe, is when I was the most vulnerable. My mom is the one who explained to me that if I started puberty now, it would be harder for me to pass as a girl unless we explored hormone suppression. This scared the shit out of me. I started hormone therapy that summer, and by the time I turned 15, I started to develop breasts, and my already small penis began to shrink. This felt good to me, good enough for me. And I had committed to the idea that when I turned 18, I would have gender reassignment surgery and truly live my life as a woman. That day came after a year of saving money, and my mom even remortgaged her house to help me pay for the surgery. I was hit with the most devastating news. My penis was so small due to hormonal stunting that I did not have the adequate anatomy to create a functioning vagina. I was told by 2 separate doctors that I could go through with the surgery, but my vaginal canal would not be even an inch and a half deep on the day of surgery, but would likely heal to a depth of less than 1 inch. The second surgeon explained that for all visual purposes I would have a vagina, but I would never be able to experience sexual intercourse that involved penetration of any kind. I chose to keep my penis intact, and instead chose to have a breast augmentation to enhance my feminine figure. Now, a year later, I have gone through many experiences that leave me feeling irreparably damaged. What I called my Great Awakening started when I reconnected with my father at 18 behind my mother's back and was shown pictures from his childhood. My father was a scrawny boy who loved to play with dolls. He had a late puberty where he didn't grow an inch from ages 12 to 15. From ages 15 to 18, he went from 5'1" to 6'2". I realized that had my father had a mother like mine, and been unfortunate to have the options available that she did, he probably would have been a victim of what I went through. I am now a 20-year-old man about to undergo breast implant removal and tissue removal to restore my body to its natural state. A fucking joke, because it'll never be normal or natural. I've been instructed by my doctor to slowly wean off my hormone therapy and hopefully start testosterone within the next 6 months. While I do feel a sense of relief that the real me is breaking through this false physical identity, I will always live knowing that I damaged myself so horrifically. I will forever have a stunted micropenis. I cannot, nor will I ever be able to have sex that involves my penis penetrating someone or something. I have zero sensation. I have never had an orgasm, and I'm told that I will likely never gain the ability to do so. My penis looks like a large clitoris with zero sensation. My mother had a mental breakdown when she found out that I was talking to my dad behind her back. She finally realized and admitted that what she had pushed so hard for. Her excuses are largely that she thought everything we were doing up till bottom surgery was completely reversible. Key here, it's not reversible. She admitted to knowing my dad was a late bloomer, but thought it had been a blessing in disguise and gave me an advantage in transitioning early. My mom kicked me out, actually cut me off, went no contact, and said that since I blame her, she would leave me alone for the rest of my life. She screamed at me, "You had a choice, it's not like I forced you to do this." I am incredibly depressed and suicidal constantly. My father and his new wife are the only ones supporting me. I can't hold a job because as soon as I am misgendered, I go into a full psychotic breakdown. I physically cannot leave my house. I feel like my life was robbed from me. What makes it so much worse is that my dad and my stepmom have 2 boys, my half-siblings, and they're allowed to play with dolls and dress up and paint their nails, but no one is encouraging them to go through what I went through. They're so happy and innocent. And they're being taught that it's okay to be a boy and like those things. Why wasn't I taught that? It's not fair. Most days I wish I was dead. Some days I wish to do horrible things to my mom and then end it all. She still views herself as this amazing person who just did what she thought I wanted. She still doesn't even see that she actually did what she wanted at the expense of my happiness. My dad and stepmom try to understand, but they will never understand. No one understands. And it's not their fault at all. My dad did the best he could. He tried to fight for me. He tried to fight for visitation. He tried to fight when my mom wanted to move me away to another state. No one listened. I was fed so many lies. I hate myself. I hate my mom and I hate my life. It doesn't get easier. It never gets better. Every day is the same. From the comments, a desisted person comments, "This is why I'm always disturbed when people like your mother is acting out in love by brainwashing you with gender ideology, but people who are critical about it are viewed as villains. I'm sorry this has happened to you. I always speak up about this, but my voice gets drained out as being hate speech. I don't understand why life's problems have to be fixed by drugs and surgeries. Why can't we accept people as they are? Life is boring and predictable. Being different means you're more interesting than a typical man, but your mother didn't see you as an individual and didn't want you to be a gender non-conforming man. I know you're probably feeling anger and resentment on what transpired you as a minor. You were just a kid trying to make sense of a complex issue, but was guided into a very medicalized path. I'm not a lawyer, but you could pursue legal charges for child abuse to people who did this to you. Or you can find the strength to let it go and move on with your life. I also grew up with parents who didn't work out their past trauma, and so they became emotionally abusive as adults. As a result, I suffer with mental health problems because of their abusive parenting. I live independently now, and I'm trying to recover from my complex trauma. There's always light at the end of the tunnel if you search for it. You can't change the past. Your mom may never apologize to you or change you as a person, fundamentally. But there's only the present and the future to work on. A detrans male individual comments, the excuses your mother gives in an attempt to maintain her own innocence in her mind are pathetic. And it seems like so many people have this mindset now that, oh well, it was your choice, too bad, when that's so clearly not reality. I'm so sorry that you went through this, and I think I can understand generally how you feel. This began as a child for me too, and I'm exclusively misgendered as a female right now, and it's making everything so hard. And then having to explain to people that I'm actually male and have them not believe me or think I'm a trans man or whatever is humiliating and draining. What your mother did to you is so repulsive, self-obsessed, and abusive. I'm sorry. I know you may not believe it or this may not mean anything to you, but I think things will get better with time. Next post, titled, How the Circle of Affirmation Gets So Addicting. This is by someone who questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning. I'm often dismissed due to my flair, but I honestly went through hell without ever being on hormones, so I know adding hormones would have made things 10 times worse. My dysphoria comes from a mixture of dissociation problems and body dysmorphia. If I had support through those, I never would have considered transition as a sound plan. I think transition should be a last case scenario, and people, kids, or adults should have a really decent therapist along the whole thing that isn't just affirmative. The affirmation is addictive, especially when we all already feel invalid. That's how they get us. The endless streams of acceptance. You often see in the trans community how they were ostracized from their friends, family, and support system and the internet becomes their new support system. This is step one in an affirmation brainwashing. It's like the cult has taken the victim and isolated them on a farm miles away from society, but mentally. I believe it's true a lot of us came from neglectful or abusive families, and that can be step two. For the first time in our life, we are being validated for being our true selves. But it's all a trick, man. Many of us found out after detrans that our family or friends could have been playing along and we had their support sometimes, but for those of us with abusive or neglectful families, we would choose anything rather than go back on our word, because we wouldn't hear the end of it. It's like admitting we were wrong, and it's a worse feeling because of the actual ostracizing of our choices by family. In a way, it's not like finding a new family that is seriously just as abusive. Because if you don't fit in perfectly with beliefs and possibly looks, the trans community will hella cut you out. One wrong belief and you are scapegoated like a child, blaming his sibling for the stolen candy. No second thought, no immediate self-preservation, so they don't have to think twice, and can't have us getting into other people's heads now. No matter how I frame this cycle, it seems common for many detrans and trans individuals. Some are so deep into the brainwashing they may never come out of it. I'm happy to see some creators in the trans community desist with hormones, but they keep their trans identity because it's the only thing holding their support system together. That's so sad. I really hope their identity isn't the only thing they believe makes them worthy of love and support. From the comments. A desisted female individual comments, I realized this not too long ago as well. I wondered why the word valid always came up, and realized it was how they kept a hold of us. Without external validation, we were nothing. I remember going to my friends after every little problem just so I could hear them affirm me. You're valid, you did nothing wrong, it's not your fault, etc. It was very pleasant to hear, but unfortunately it made me into the most fragile, unhappy, codependent person I could ever possibly be. Also, how they always say we accept you, your family doesn't, so we're your real family, is pretty much manipulative BS, so you won't listen to anyone except them. What I hate most about this is I did all of this too, to my friends, without even realizing it. Next post, titled, Suicidal and Embarrassed to Tell Anyone Why I'm So Sad Because I Did This all to myself. This is by a detrans female individual. No, I don't have a plan, and yes, I'll be here tomorrow, but the pain gets worse every day. I just can't believe I did this to myself. I get so jealous of women every day because they didn't do what I did. It was so glaringly obvious that I'm not trans, but I convinced myself more and more that I was until I ended up on T for 7 or 8 months and now the damage is done. I hate talking. I hate meeting new people. I've hated myself deeply to my core for as long as I can remember. I've always felt like there was something wrong with me, that I didn't deserve love or life. Now I can see that there was nothing ever wrong with me. I'm stuck with something physical and real to hate. I don't know what to do. I hate the adults who cheered me for suddenly finding myself when I had never had any signs of dysphoria before. I have a history of delusions and psychosis. I was literally in the hospital for a psychotic episode when I came out as female to male. And now we're here. I don't know what to do. I don't expect anyone here to know what I should do either. Just shouting into the void, I guess. Hope someone will read this and feel less alone. And from the comments, someone who's socially trans but regrets their entire transition says, everyone here is so positive, which I really applaud, but I feel absolute hatred too, not towards myself because I was too young to know better, but towards the people who allowed this to happen. Doesn't anyone else here see how wrong it was that they allowed someone with psychotic episodes and no history of dysphoria to go ahead? Why are questions only being asked of us? I was so intent on getting tea that I would have said anything about my history. But it wasn't true. None of it was true, but I convinced myself it was true. I was just fucked up by a sexual assault. I didn't tell anyone at the time. I've gotten therapy, which has really helped, but now my body is scarred because no one asks the right questions. They just took my money. Just know, someone who's assisted replies to that, just know there are some people out there 100% completely against this mind virus and sympathize with you. I will never be accepting of the trans agenda, and I encourage each and every one of you to start suing. Only until people start losing money will this insanity ever stop. So on to the next post, titled, Male to female folks who had sex reassignment surgery, how often can you bear to dilate? Just a brief explanation. Dilating is a process of basically expanding the open wound that they create to imitate the parts of the other gender, or the other sex, sorry. I'm roughly 7 years post-op sex reassignment surgery. It was brutal. I'm left with no sensation aside from pain. From the get-go, I absolutely couldn't bear dilating. It was so painful, and it just felt like my body was rejecting it every time. 3 times a day for 20 minutes at a time. They said to drop down to once a week after the first year or so, but I actually literally just can't. I'm lucky if I manage once a month. And the only reason I do it is because I live in fear of it closing and forming pockets and giving me some sort of sepsis. They didn't really tell me what to expect in the long term. They focused on the immediate potential surgical complications and neglected to let me know what to expect 5 to 10 years down the line. The knowledge that I have to live with this for the rest of my life just makes me feel terribly sorry for myself. Now from the comments, someone who's questioning their own gender transition says, I haven't had a problem dilating. I had a penile inversion with a skin graft from my scrotum. I think the doctor gave me a pretty generous vaginal cavity. The only problem is more than 3 years out, I still have to dilate 3+ times a week. If I don't, it seems to want to close up and quickly gets tight. I basically maintain it out of fear of complications. I don't really use it for penetrative sex. Also, no matter what I do to keep it clean, I've had problems with odor and urinary tract infections. And someone who's a detrans female comments, Firstly, I'm so sorry. The numbness and pain from surgery isn't really talked about in most trans circles I've seen or been in. I know it's probably not ideal, but have you ever thought of finding a surgeon and asking them to basically close it up and leaving you with just the external appearance so you don't have to deal with the pain anymore? And the original poster replies to that. I have, but I don't know of any surgeons outside of the original surgeon and the ones he's trained who can perform that kind of surgery. Also, I can't afford it. I don't think my healthcare services are going to be likely to help out either. Now on to the next post, titled Transitioned Too Young. Mistook dysmorphia for dysphoria. This is by a detrans female. Lost female to female. Transitioned too young. I transitioned at 11. Hormone blockers / testosterone at 12. Top surgery a month after my 13th. I was in 8th grade. Around 15/16, I stopped refilling my testosterone prescription and seeing my doctors regularly, and nobody reached out to check on me. I feel a bit abandoned. My mom really did most of the work talking to doctors and getting the ball rolling. Now I'm barely 18 and can barely schedule my own therapy appointments, let alone know who to contact, what to say, to get the process rolling again to look into implants / check if my hormones are at relatively normal levels. I haven't had a blood panel in years. Sorry if this isn't allowed here. I can't vent to anyone in real life. Even though I obviously present like a woman, every time my mom asks if I regret anything, I deny it. I don't want to crush her. Even though there's resentment in my heart, I had other underlying mental health problems that went entirely unchecked. Not to mention I hit puberty at 8 and mistook reasonable discomfort / body dysmorphia as dysphoria. As a kid, thought transition would be a foolproof solution, and now I'm a lost adult. Any advice or support would be immensely appreciated. And from the comments, a detrans female person comments, I'm sorry, same story and age. I understand the conflicted resentment. I wish you so much in the future. Next post, titled, I find that there are many trans people who don't want to hear my story. This is by a detrans female. I'm really not trying to be combative anymore. I really do think that it'll help the trans community to know of failed transitions, if I want to call my experience that. I have been commenting in a few transgender threads to talk about my experience. It seems like a lot of the trans people honestly don't really care. I have had a few good comments which gave me hope. Otherwise, people don't want to listen to a detransitioner who was heavily involved in pro-trans spaces and had literally 0 instances of transphobia, yet detransitioned out of genuine regret. I feel like they would rather I didn't exist. From the comments, a detrans female person comments, I've been told that I need to censor the word detransition because it's too triggering to mention openly on Discord. That I'm not entitled to tell my story because it would harm trans people, so it's my duty to stay quiet if I want to not be a transphobic. That I'm probably not genuine and I'm a troll pretending to be detransitioning to hurt trans people. It really doesn't seem fair to treat us like our existence brings harm. And a detrans person replies to that. Number 2 is a monstrous accusation. Telling marginalized, traumatized people to censor ourselves. So lacking in empathy. I've been told that too, and it makes me feel so alone. Now, a detrans female person comments on the original post. I think part of it is because you could regret I think part of it is because if you could regret detransitioning, so could they. And they don't even want to acknowledge that as a possibility. Groupthink also plays a role. Many believe detransitioners stand in the way just by existing of achieving trans-related political / social goals. Now on to the next post, titled, Feeling Over Living as Male to Female. This is by someone who's questioning their own gender transition. Disclaimer. These are only my opinions and feelings based on my experience. In no way do I wish to offend anyone. What I'm saying doesn't necessarily apply to you. I have been transitioning male to female for about 6 years. I had bottom surgery about 3 years ago. I don't feel like I am or need to be a woman anymore. I had mistakenly thought gender transition was what I needed to relieve my lifelong depression. Although I take responsibility, I feel like my mental health care professionals encouraged me to go down the path of gender transition. Looking back, I can't believe I took things so far. I think once I got in the past a certain point, I felt like I could only move forward or transition. I also think I was deluding myself about passing. I think I look okay, relatively speaking, but something always gives me away as trans. Even if they look really good, I think 99.999% of male to female trans are like this. Since transitioning, I've become isolated socially. On the surface, friends act like they're supportive, but I'm not included or invited to events anymore. Family is more or less the same way. I've not found friends in the LGBTQ plus community. In my experience, there's a fair amount of transphobia in the gay and lesbian communities. I don't feel too tragic about having had bottom surgery, but it was such a huge mistake. My surgery went okay with no major complications, but I think even a successful surgery comes with a lot of problems. Now, bladder infections are a semi-regular thing, and keeping it clean is a full-time job. I was told that at this point I'd only have to dilate once a week, but I still need to dilate at least 3 to 4 times a week or things start to shrink up. The worst thing is that I believe it's a huge impediment to finding a mate. I'm attracted to women, and it's been difficult to find a woman who will accept me having had bottom surgery. Not sure what to do now. It seems I've put myself in a position where I won't be accepted as a man or a woman. I feel like I'm done trying to live as a woman. For me, it has been a futile effort. I think for a long time I was either out of touch with reality. I'm not really interested in trying to transition back to male either. I don't think it would be worth it to try and rebuild my male genitalia with a phalloplasty. I would like a flat chest again, but I don't really want to undergo more surgery. Right now I'm kind of isolated and I don't see people often, so I'm not really worried about my presentation much. I'm not sure how to fix my situation, and I'm pretty sure I'll be alone for the rest of my life. Next post, titled, Something That Made Me Conceptualize My Dysphoria Differently. This is by someone who's dysphoric. I'm someone who was not dysphoric at all as a child, though the meaning of dysphoria has become so diluted that at some point I consider my childhood difficulties such as having problems, socializing, and relating to my peers facets of social dysphoria. But anyways, what I mean is precisely discomfort surrounding my primary/secondary sex characteristics. I didn't have that as a child. I existed unbothered by this. I was a happy, confident, despite affirmation problems with socializing, tomboy. I remember it very well. So the argument that me experiencing dysphoria in my 20s means I was actually trans all along, and my secret yet inherent trans identity was just waiting to resurface, is something I intellectually didn't buy into. It's all too faith-based. It's too similar to thinking you have your real essence/soul/spirit or whatever inside and you're about to discover it for real someday. But else would explain this bout of dysphoria. One day I came upon this excerpt from Cracked, Why Psychiatry is Doing More Harm Than Good. Content warning for discussion of self-harm. Was it merely coincidence that after self-harm entered the DSM in 1994, the number of popular articles on self-harm trebled, increasing from 485 articles in the 4-year period before its inclusion to 1,441 in the 4-year period after, while the rate of self-injury doubled from 1997 to 2007? Was the growth of the popular references to self-harm simply reflecting a growing epidemic? Or were these references actually helping spread self-harming behavior? Was psychiatry, by giving prominence to self-harm in the DSM, helping endorse the idea that self-harm was a legitimate way through which young people could express distress? To explain how this could happen, let's make use of a very interesting metaphor, that of the symptom pool. Each culture possesses a metaphorical pool of culturally legitimate symptoms through which members of a given society can choose, mostly unconsciously, to express their distress. This idea helps explain, among other things, why symptoms are very common in one culture and not in another. Why, for example, do men in Southeast Asia experience what's called koro, the terrifying certainty that their genitals are retracting into their body, but not men in Wales or Alaska? Why do menopausal women in Korea experience hwarbyong, I think I pronounced that right, intense fits of sighing, heavy feeling in the chest, blurred vision, and sleeplessness, but not women in New Zealand or Scandinavia? If enough people begin to talk about a symptom as though it exists, and if this symptom is given legitimacy by an accepted authority, then, sure enough, more and more people will begin to manifest that symptom. As our symptom pool alters, we're given new ways to embody our distress, and as these catch on, they proliferate. This idea implies that certain disorders we take for granted are actually caused less by biological than cultural factors. Like crazes or fads, they can grip or release a population as they enter or fade from popular awareness. This is not because people consciously choose to display symptoms that are fashionable members of the symptom pool, just that people seem to gravitate unconsciously towards expressing those symptoms high on the cultural scale of symptom possibilities. And this, of course, makes sense, as it's crucial that we express our discontent in ways that make sense to the people around us. Otherwise, we will end up not just ill, but ostracized. As Anne Harrington, professor of history of science at Harvard puts it, our bodies are physiologically primed to be able to do this, and for a good reason. If we couldn't, we would risk not being taken seriously or not being cared for. Human beings seem to be invested with a developed capacity to mold their bodily experiences to the norms of their cultures. They learn the scripts about what kinds of things they should be happening to them as they fall ill and about the things they should do to feel better. And then they literally embody them. Psychiatric contagions do not spread through conscious emulation, then, but because we are unconsciously configured to embody species of distress deemed legitimate by communities in which we live. Which made me think, so as an anxious 20-something with no history of childhood sex dysphoria, I could have internalized some of its symptoms as they began to be talked about so much in the last few years, and it explained my situation so much better than a secret yet completely real and unchangeable trans identity that I was supposed to have always had. I made my first post about experiencing dysphoria back in 2021. I'm in a very different place now, and one day I'll make a post about my journey. This excerpt that made me think differently about my discomfort obviously didn't make me go from depressed and dysphoric to unbothered in the matter of 3 minutes it takes to read. Lol, but I consider it an important moment in my overall story. Yeah, no, that was good. From the comments. A detrans male individual comments, "It was huge to me to have an explanation for the feeling like nothing ever worked in my life or relationships, other than everything is my fault and I'm a broken failure and disappointment and abomination, which was more or less the identity my parents gave me. Society helped me hate myself for being white and male too. To have an explanation and suddenly get support and have my life make sense to people, to have them see me as brave and vulnerable and worthy of support and protection and being listened to, it was life-changing. I ultimately decided it wasn't true, but mattering and having people believe in me after a lifetime of feeling like I didn't was huge for me." Someone who's questioning their own gender transition comments, "I feel society plays a huge part in the distress portion of our mental health issues. If it's not acceptable, then more distress follows. It seems, as the brain always does, find the shortest path to relief. Here's the label. No need to work on it. It's a thing you can't change. Feel relieved. This can be helpful if you really can't work on it, but very harmful if you can. I went to a gender health center and had therapy sessions for about 6 months. I had to convince my gender therapist to talk about my issues. She was ready to just give me hormones and figure out the insurance stuff. What if I realized that this wasn't what was wrong, and now I've changed my body? Therapy has become something like going to McDonald's. You just go through the drive-thru and get your diagnoses. Sorry for the rant. I agree with your citing." And now on to today's last post, titled, "Beautiful Experiences After Detransitioning." This is by a detrans female. It's amazing what I've let myself do since accepting who and what I am. I'm happy to be a young woman, and instead of hiding from the world, I'm embracing it. I went to a goth club last night and danced my heart out. I even danced in just my bra at one point. It was so freeing, and I'll never forget that freeing feeling. Just seeing the lights and feeling the music through my whole body, and not once having to worry about passing, about how people would see me, just living and being young and happy. It was euphoric. I truly hope everyone gets to experience this feeling. Hell, I especially hope trans people can stop caring so much about gender presentation and just embrace life for what it is, rather than what they feel it should be to validate them. Let it loose. It feels so good. And that brings us to an end. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe to support this content. Thank you so much again, and have a good day.